Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. So today we have another weekly reading update. I actually read 3 books, finished some that I have been working on for a little while, so let's go ahead and get into it. The first book that I read is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters. This is an adult epic high fantasy, and it follows our main character Tao, who lives in a society that has been caught in this unwinnable war for the last 200 years, and everything in the society is based upon fighting and war and battles. There are some people in the society who are born with great powers, and they obviously have more advantages than people who don't, and so you sort of have like a caste system in that way. And there's an interesting part of the society where 1 in every 1,000 or 2,000 women has the ability to call down a dragon and use that as some of their power in battle and things like that. And 1 in every 100 men can potentially change into this bigger, stronger, more powerful, more fearsome warrior. So I thought that that was pretty interesting. I've heard people compare this to like a Gladiator meets Game of Thrones with Black Panther in there, and I feel like that's 100% accurate. This is really, I thought this was such a fun book for the most part. I did end up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. And I guess I told you about the basis of the world, but let's talk about the plot. So Tao knows that he's going to be a warrior, he's going to have to battle, he's going to have to kill, and he does not want to do that. He is in love with this village girl, and he wants to marry her, raise children, raise a family, and just live a very simple but beautiful life. And some circumstances happen that make that impossible for him, and then the whole book is basically him on this quest for revenge. But the problem that I really had with this book is that it was overwhelmingly full of fight scenes, like way too many fight scenes. So many to the point that I found myself just continuously putting the book down and not even wanting to pick it up because I'm like, I just can't read. I can't read more fight scenes. I just can't do it, you know? And I think that they are well written, but they're not really showing anything about our character. They're not really showing anything about the plot. They're not really doing much to progress the story forward, and they certainly weren't doing much to keep my interest and to keep me engaged and to keep me reading. And honestly, I found that interesting because that's a very similar complaint that I have to romance novels, when a different type of action takes over, and then I'm just sort of like, why do I care? There are stakes here, sure, both with a lot of fight scenes and with a lot of that other type of action, but what's the point? Why do I care? What's it doing? And I know that's an unpopular opinion in romance novels, but I don't really care. I want every scene to be moving our characters forward or to be moving our story forward. And so in that way I found that to be a little bit of a similar analogy, and I found that to be interesting. So I didn't love this book, although for the first half of it I was really truly engaged and I wanted to see where it was going. And then it just sort of felt like the pace kind of just dropped off a cliff. And I was just sort of like, oh my gosh, how much more of this is left? But the writing style was solid, it was very readable. I found the world to, although not be fully developed, it was kind of lacking in detail. It was also just very easy to get into. It felt very relatable. It felt like a world that I've read a little bit before, and again, basing that off of the things that I feel like this is kind of comparable to. And I felt like this was just an excellent audiobook. If you're going to read this book, I would highly recommend the audio. The narrator really and truly elevates this book, I think, and makes it an experience to read. If I hadn't been listening to the audio, I probably would have given this a 3-star review. So I liked it. And parts of it I really enjoyed, but there was also just a long stretch where I was just like, I don't care. I don't care who dies at this point. You know, it kind of actually, I don't want to compare it to Fourth Wing, but because it's not at all like Fourth Wing, but you know, in Fourth Wing, a lot of characters die, but it feels so meaningless because you don't really know them or you don't really care about them. It's just like, oh, another character died, you know, like you gotta feel. And this book did a lot better at that. There were some character deaths that I was like, ugh, you know, but anyway, so 4 stars, a generous 4 stars, but only really for the audiobook. If I had read this physically, it probably would have been a 3-star or less, so 4 stars for me. Alright, so now let's talk about the other book that I finished, My Season of Scandal by Julianne Long. I finally finished this. I've been reading it for a couple of weeks, almost a month actually, and I finally finished it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. This I gave 5 stars. I think this is one of the best recently published historical romances that I've read in a really long time, and honestly it's everything that I expect from Julianne Long. It has her clever, sharp writing style, very witty, very on point, the type of writing style that you're just like, oh, that's clever, that's fun. I like how the banter is going, top tier banter, really great sense of the characters. You have this is part of the Palace of Rogues series, so you have this whole hotel or this inn and the people who own it, which we've met in previous books, and recurring guests, so it has this sense of like a found family, characters that you know and have loved through the whole series that you get to see again. And the thing that I absolutely love the most in Julianne Lang's books, and specifically in this one, is just how great the romance was developed and built. She builds tension and chemistry and longing so well. I just love how she does that. She just is able to create this feeling of them feeling so many different emotions, all the way from like attraction to friendliness to like this piercing of their heart when they feel like these tender feelings for one another, almost like love, until they actually do get to fall in love. And it's just such a beautiful romance. I loved it. I can't recommend this series. The whole series is fantastic. This is probably one of my biggest historical romance recommendation series. Even after Lisa Kleypas, this one is it's just perfection. It's just top tier. This is everything that you want in a historical romance, because you have dashing heroes, you have some of them that are rogues and scoundrels, but they have this heart of gold and they fall in love so deeply with the heroine. And then you have these heroines who come from all different sorts of circumstances, some of them struggling with very different things, and some of them kind of maybe with a little bit of an attitude, but you get to see these two people just completely fall in love, and they just seem like they are the perfect match for one another. So I loved this. The basic premise of this is we have Catherine, whose mother has passed away, and her father is a doctor, and he realizes that he has some symptoms that kind of let him know he may not be long for this world either. So it's his last wish to see her married, to finally have a season, to see her settled down and happy. And so he sends her with a chaperone. They go to stay at the Palace of Rogues, and that's when she's going to have her season and hopefully find a suitable husband that will love her and will take care of her and will provide for her, and her dad can pass away in peace. And then we have our hero, Lord Kirk, who is a member of Parliament, and he is a little bit of a rebel. He's trying to get some laws passed that are maybe not so popular, and he is definitely a rake and a scoundrel, but he also has this truly heart of gold and this like center of goodness that is evident in everything that he does. Specifically with our heroine, he is so overwhelmed with his desire for her, while that is battling with his desire to do what is right by her and to take care of her and to make sure she doesn't get into any trouble, and those are like battling at all times. So you have this really big sense of angst and pining, and then you have Catherine, who's sort of on this for the first time, discovering things about herself and her desires and her feelings that she's never had before, and it's just beautifully captured. And there were so many moments in here that were just filled with so much longing and just tenderness. This is fantastic. This is the historical romance to read. If you take any of my recommendations, please read The Palace of Rogues. It's currently on Kindle Unlimited. You have to read it. I loved this book. 5 stars. Fantastic historical romance. Okay, and then the next book that I read is Broken Whispers by Neva Altaj. So this is a mafia romance. It's very short. I think the audiobook, which is how I listened to this, is only like 6.5 hours maybe. But it still took me a little while to read, and I think that's mostly because I was prioritizing The Rage of Dragons because I wanted to finish that for a book club on TikTok. And so I kind of put this aside to finish that, and once I had finished that, especially coming off of the heels of The Spear Cuts Through Water, which I reviewed last week, I was so ready for a romance that was a little bit lighter, a little bit easier of a read, and just something that was going to just be fun and consuming. And that's exactly what this was. So I know this is a mafia romance, which technically puts it in the dark romance category, but there's very little about this that is dark. The hero is not dark towards our heroine at all. He is not abusive. He is not harsh. He is not overly alpha. He is alpha because, again, he is part of the mafia. He's a very powerful mafia man, and he is very protective and possessive of her, but in the way that romance readers like myself really enjoy. It's not directed in any way like to keep her penned in or to force her to obey like his will. He's very good about actually like honoring her wishes and her desires while at the same time being just so fiercely protective of her. And that by far was my favorite part about this book, was watching him be so protective of her and just his desire for her, his feelings for her. It just was so beautiful. And again, like, she had great feelings for him too. She at times was really overcome with her desire for him and really overcome with her longing for him and her desire to know and fall in love with him. It was just so beautiful. This was very fun. A very quick, easy read. I would highly recommend this. The basic premise is she is a ballerina and she is married off to this Russian mafia guy. our hero, and he is a scarred hero, and she is not speaking like of her own volition. She chooses not to speak. There are some circumstances around why she doesn't, which we learn later. And the two of them get in this arranged marriage, and she is a little wary of him, but she's also, like, despite herself and despite being wary of him, she's also very attracted to him and also very intrigued with him. And he has been pining and just, like, sort of admiring her from afar for a very long time. So when the opportunity to marry her came up with his mafia people, he was like, I volunteer as tribute. Yes, I would like to marry her. And so they enter into this marriage, and they're both very willing partners. They're very willing to work on this marriage and to have it actually be something that may work out. And he's very respectful and very tender. He has a daughter from a previous woman that really shows him as a very caring and a loving dad. And the heroine kind of takes to her in a very easy and fun, very quick way, which I also really liked. And I just felt like the characters were really well developed. I felt like they were perfectly built for this very specific mafia story, which feels very soft and very romantic and very loving. And I just enjoyed this a whole lot. I did end up giving this 4 stars instead of 5 stars because I do think, and this could possibly just be because of how short it was, the romance, the longing, any type of tension, that buildup of falling in love really wasn't there because they were both so agreeable to the marriage, and so they kind of moved right along to married people life, and we kind of missed that. And even though that continues to happen throughout the rest of the book, I personally prefer a lot of build up to the falling in love. I want to see the falling in love. I don't want them to just be together and then living happily. So this book is, I would also say, is very, very low angst, very low stakes. Well, maybe not low stakes. There are stakes, but they are on page high, but they don't particularly feel high. So in that way, this kind of felt a little cozy. And those books usually don't really knock it out of the park for me because I want there to be some angst. I want there to be some struggle. I don't really want a whole book of people just living happily ever after. And even though it wasn't technically perfectly living happily ever after, there were just overwhelming things about this that just felt like they were just living happily, you know? So I liked this a lot. It wasn't quite a 5-star read, but I still would like highly recommend it. 4 out of 5 stars. Just pleasant, fun, enjoyable, swoony. This was great. And if you like a protective hero, you gotta read this book for sure. If you haven't already, because I feel like everybody but me has read it, so. Okay, there we go. Those are the 3 books that I read this week. They were all books that I had been in progress for like the week before, and maybe even one the week before that. So now I'm not currently reading anything, and it is Friday when I'm filming this, so I have the weekend to read. Actually, that's not true. I am currently reading one book, but I'm not super far into it, and yeah, so I am going to be reading Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, and so I am going to be participating in another book club that is reading the Stormlight Archives that I found on TikTok. They're going to be the book club. I know the Stormlight Archives. My husband has read it, you know. I know Brandon Sanderson, but this book is kind of essential pre-reading to the Stormlight Archives, and so that book club begins in June. So I thought now would be a perfect time to read this, even though it's going off of my TBR. This is an adult fantasy, and I feel like this is a magical world that is based off of, like, colors. So I'm very interested in this, and I'm very excited to get into it. So this is going to be mostly my audiobook for the weekend, I think. I may read this physically too, but Brandon Sanderson, Warbreaker. And then the romance that I want to get to next is finally King of Sloth by Anna Huang. I am so excited for this book. I still am not sure. I think I may do the audio for this as well. I don't know. I have the paperback and I have it on KU. Do I need the audio? Actually, I think I have the audio. I think I did buy the audio because I had the Kindle book, and then a lot of times if you get the Kindle book, even on Kindle Unlimited, you can get the audio upgrade for like $7, so I did that. So that is the romance that I want to read. So these are the 2 books that I'm going to be reading next. And then, yeah, we're not going to do a book haul today because it was my birthday week, and I got quite a lot of new books, so I'm going to do a separate book haul video and not just include it in here. So yeah, that's all I have for y'all. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If you have made it this far, please feel free to leave me a green emoji in honor of my shirt, and I'll see y'all next time.